He finds out has done it again.
Davido.
So Davido raised Davido raised a huge amount of money recently.
A lot of money. About 150 mil or over 150 mil. Yeah, that was a lot of money, bro.
How did this make you feel, though? Like
the wildest part is that people were hustling to give Davido money. That was the wildest part of the conversation. Like, giving Davido money on that day became clouds. Do you understand? Like, it felt like, because that moment created fear of missing out for people. And a lot of people who are vanity chasers and exhibitionists that probably didn't have the money were giving Davido money. But you know what that also means? Conversely, it means that Davido's star power is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. But Davido might not, in terms of popularity and commercial value, Wizkid remains the biggest artist in that generation. But in terms of, because Davido is so accessible, the accessibility of Davido has made him this guy that looks very personable. Wiz is aloof. Burna is Burna. Olamide is some sort of a recluse. You don't see him out and about every time. But you see, David is everywhere. He's rolling with his gang. He's accessible. He wants to feature with everybody. Like, he's like Drake. It's like LeBron James in terms of like conversation. It's accessible. Everybody can reach him. It's sometimes, over the past one year, it's become some sort of a negative. But it's so interesting yet, because it's also come up trumps for him when he needs publicity. For example, he was finally about to officially release Champion Sound. And that was the perfect PR for Davido, because his name had sort of, because Wiz was happening, CK was happening. David has had some strong features this year, don't get it wrong. Like Adekunle Goes High, huge record. Go Wale, huge record, right? All those things have happened. But it didn't feel like it was enough, because we've seen Davido have bigger years, so people are going to judge him by his heights, especially if you have done it for 10 years. So that moment was sort of the perfect PR for Davido in terms of like showing people that it's still me. Now still me, OBO, I did for you, you know? It was a huge moment. But it was just, but another thing that moment told me was, aside from star power, Davido as an influencer, so artists going forward, artists are not just going to be artists anymore. They are now influencers. They are making deals, they're having shows. The biggest, over the next 10 years, the artists that can diversify their streams of income are going to be the ones that are going to be sustainable. For example, Snoop Dogg is a DJ now. Snoop Dogg is a DJ now. Like, artists are going to not just diversifying their portfolio now, diversifying the ways that they leverage their star power. Not just the revenue that comes from star power, but they leverage their star power. So Davido has shown brands that, look, I can get you this if I create the right platform. For example, look what he did with Mattel. Look what he did for Leo through Mattel. Right? Those things are very interesting. Like, they are very, it shows that Davido's brand is formidable. It shows that people can reckon with Davido's brand. It shows that a lot of people want to be associated with it. It shows that it can trigger people. There's social currency to the name Davido. It can inspire people, it can trigger people. And if you can do that, brands want to fuck with you. That's what it means. But it also means, aside from that, to create that, it means Davido can create fear of missing out. He can create a rush. For example, the bank that he did that with, you know what they're going to, their name was on the biggest, possibly the biggest moment on African social media that day. Possibly, quite possibly. Even the guy that had the controversy that day will be thanking the stars that Davido decided that he was going to do that day. Because he sort of cleared his name, right? So he's leveraging his brand, and the way, shout out to his team, whoever thought about that idea, such a brilliant mind. Fantastic. So it showed us what it did. But what that moment also showed me is that That's the one part of what we saw. That's the direct thing of that we saw. But there are tons of things that we're not seeing. There are conversations that we need to start from this. For example, streaming has sort of brought revenue back to the music industry. But still, it feels like there's no adequate circulation of music, of revenue, especially to the depth of the industry. So what this David, and that's why people are proposing like user-centric payment system on streaming platforms. That's why Tidal is incorporating it. That's why NFTs are sort of becoming things now, because if I can sell I don't need a label to reach my fans anymore, and my fans can now become shareholders in my career, and they can also sell the things that they buy from me, and I can still make money from that. That's why all these things are happening. We sort of used to say that we are not there yet, and to be honest, we are not there yet. A lot of people can afford this, and most people are illiterate about the blockchain. Most people don't even trade crypto, so they can't understand NFTs. So and then there's people might not be able to afford. People cannot afford to pay 900 naira for an album, for 900 naira for streaming platforms. Are they going to be able to pay? Tory Lanez sold his album for about, was it $100 or $10, right? Nigerians are probably not going to pay $10 for an album. Not probably, they are not going to pay. So when you look at the cumulative of those factors, it feels like Davido might have cracked something and proven that there's potential. There's a lot of potential. Because number one, it proved that you can leverage stamp culture, not just to sell your music or as an outreach. You can leverage it to directly pay you. Now, imagine if what Davido did that day was launching a token. Imagine if Davido then, all the people that then paid into that, Davido created a directory for them that he can reach them through. Maybe via Davido's newsletter or whatever. That people he can reach directly. Maybe paying members of Davido. Paying Davido fan members. So if Davido stands up today and says people should be subscribing to Davido website and they can get music and exclusive content, people are going to pay. And that sort of tells me that that's what streaming platforms need to do. Streaming, aside from the fact that purchasing power is horrible, consumer behavior is horrible, that's my number 2 point. Consumer behavior is horrible. Streaming platforms also have a thing of people don't know that they can pay for music like that. Some people that can afford to pay, you don't know. They don't even know how to. Imagine if Davido was pushing Apple Music or Spotify and says, go and subscribe on this. Or maybe you get this and incentivize people to go and to start subscribing to streaming platforms. That's how a lot of people are going to know about streaming platforms. And they're going to start paying. They're going to become premium members. Number 3, it brings me to the conversation of crowdfunding. Shout out to Osagi Alonge. He was telling me some years ago that crowdfunding should become a thing in Nigerian music. But he also noted that crowdfunding might still be early days for crowdfunding. So about 3 or 4 years ago. He was talking about individual artists and independent artists and how this could work for them. But the problem with a lot of Nigerian artists is they want to engage in crowdfunding, but they don't have fans. They have listeners, they don't have fans. That's because a lot of people gazump the process. They gazump the process of getting fans because everybody wants to have a hit. Most people don't prepare to have a career. Now, most artists need to change their mindset from the mindset of having hits to the mindset of having a career. So that means you are starting from the ground up with the mindset of playing the long game, not to get hits. If I get hits, that's fine. But I'm making music to get people on my side. I am good. I know people will like my music. Now I'm making music that they might like. I'm going to keep tweaking it to suit their palettes, to see what works and what doesn't work. That's how fans are made. That's how someone like Bramo that's why someone like Bramo has fans. That's why he can pack landmark after a year of controversy. That is why some of these things can happen. So crowdfunding can only work when you have fans. That's what Nigerian artists need to look at. Crowdfunding. They've just showed that day that crowdfunding is possible. We're going to get to the issue of sustainability later. But right now it proves that maybe not now, but there's potential there. That's another thing. Number 4, there's the issue of tipping that I want to talk about. Now, we've seen UCPS, conversations around NFTs have started. I'm going to write an article very soon about tipping. I think music streaming platforms should bring tipping into the conversation. Tipping, like people tipping artists. I've subscribed, right? But now I want to be able to give you $1 because I think you are fantastic. I think streaming platforms need to do that. Imagine Davido is showing that people are willing to give artists money. Aside from money that they're paying to the artists for their music or their shows or whatever. Imagine if Davido had a platform and then a platform built on the blockchain where he's saying that if you subscribe, you can access this, you can access that, you can do this, you can do that, and then you can tip me. Artists need to think big. Oh, I'm not a brand. Okay, how can I get out from under this person and start making this money? That needs to happen. Or maybe the label needs to start thinking like that for the artists. Because that's one way that they are going to be sustainable. Right now, they are going to be scrambling. Because the third party is... We are headed to a creator economy where the creator has most of the power. The labels now have to start thinking, how can we help the creators make money while it still benefits us? So if you're going to be the one that's going to create these platforms, then you got to do that. Now it brings you to merchandising. People give Davido money for free. For free. $1 million for free. If merchandise was pushed properly, like for example, the tag Wizkid FC came from merchandise, like from Wizkid's merchandise some years ago. I think before the 2018 World Cup. That was where the name sort of skyrocketed. That's where it's talk, Wizkid FC. But the jerseys were too expensive. Most people couldn't afford it. Now imagine if the merchandise was remotely affordable. If the video brings it and says, I have this much of maybe 5,000 to 10,000 naira, everybody buy. People are going to buy. It also brings us to the conversation of ticketing and bundles, merchandising and bundles. I'm talking about merchandise, but it makes us believe, it makes us think that bundles can possible if the artists themselves lead the conversation in a creative way. That's another thing. Now, but the question now for a lot of people is, how sustainable is it? Is it sustainable? If I come today and say, do this, I come tomorrow and say, do this. Over time, as it becomes consistent, the reactions to it are going to keep dropping. You might not notice it, but they'll keep dropping because Nigerians don't have money. I can't keep giving Davido 1 million every week. But if it's 5,000, maybe I can. But it's even like the numbers are still going to drop. So it shows us that we might not be there yet to do some of those things, but it shows that there is hot potential. And people need to start creating infrastructure for some of those things to thrive. And that's factual.